Hey everyone, it's Krista. We're here. We're going to be working on that fuel tank. Let's make you a little taller. I'm still pretty washed out from ambient light. That sucks. One of these days we'll get the settings right. Jeez. I'm sure that was noisy. SF. And I just ran into you. That's great. Okay. And wow. I just don't know what to think of this. How do I get the tank and you in the screen at the same time? Do we put you right on top of me? Apologies for the. I mean, that kind of works. Okay. I mean, you can see what's happening. You see the table. Yeah, why not? Okay. So this is our logbook of when I do the bake. And so we write down the observed temperature, the date. We keep track of what the serial number will be. What if I move you? Of course, it's going to be loud again. Sorry. What if I move you? Can we do this? Yeah, I don't know what works. We'll have to figure it out. If you have suggestions on where to put y'all's camera rather than in the sky, you're about 7-ish feet. I don't know. How do you get like the people and the things? Or I could go there and lower like I used to and be washed out. I was trying to sort of move around. I don't know. Let's try that. Let's move you again. So a lot of times that's where I do my work. So we're gonna pick y'all up. Oh, I unplugged you from the network somehow. Okay. That's no good. Wow, what a weird view. Okay. Let's get you plugged back into the network so there's bit rates. I can't tell what that did. Okay. Fine. Yeah, we're gonna have loud noises again. Well, that, I guess, yeah. All right. That's what we're going with. Okay. So you're right there in my grill. confused. Okay, so we're going to use the impact. I have a tool tray for this product. It has most of the tools needed to do the operations on this tank. The first one is this, I believe it's straight up, yeah, 4-inch hole saw. That's our first tool. And we're going to use a Ryobi drill. Their brushless drill worked better for me, but it died after, I don't know, a few years of light use. The selector switch quit working in forward. I took it apart and I didn't really see anything to do for that, and oh well. Already starting to perspire. Let's turn the fan on. I use a vacuum to start collecting chips. Working on these tanks makes lots of plastic shards and chips and debris. Also, the tanks are really static cleaning, so I just try to get rid of those chips all the time. That's kind of like the main thing I'm always doing is managing chips. Oh, I guess I could do an intro about what this is, because I put it in the description, so just assume everyone read that. This is a rotationally molded fuel tank. We brought molding in-house when we moved from California to Georgia. No one was able to incorporate our tools into their rotations or their, literally production rotation as opposed to rotation molding, without causing them lost revenue from their other tools. So we ended up finding a used rotational molding machine that we bought and I fixed. We made this tank 3 days ago. It uses 9 pounds of cross-linked black powder. And yeah, so it's out of the mold and it has two fixtures or cooling fixtures for when it's done. I took this one off. This distance, if you take it out of the tool without any other changes, is too narrow. So I have just a bolt with screws that pushes outward. All right, so yeah, this is for Ducati Monsters of the first generation that goes from like 93 to 2007 or 8. Starts with the 900, 750, and 400 air cooled, and it goes through the 695 model in like 2006, 7, or 8, and that's the last one. Okay, let's get to it. So this likes to kick a lot, so I kind of brace it. So this hole is for the fuel pump flange mounting plate. This tank is a direct replacement for the nylon tanks Ducati used from about 2003 through the end for this era. And those have a fuel pump and a round flange. So like the S2R monsters of the 800 and 1000, and some monster 620s have the nylon, and the 695 gets a nylon tank. So all of those with the fuel pump on the flange inside, bolted to the bottom. It's just like you change out your plastic for ours. And so this ring protects the sealing surface where the O-ring is supposed to seal. You can see that would be here. This is one of our old fuel flanges. And then you can also tell how sometimes I've skipped out and completely would have ruined the tank had the teeth of that gone across where the O-ring seals. Alright. So we're going to put our test flange on. This flange was featured in a very recent video talking about how someone didn't want to put the O-ring on. The shop thought it was too hard, and so I did a video on how to install the O-ring. They just made the decision the O-ring was too small for that spot and didn't do it. So I figured go live because I don't do well with scripted things. I don't do well with saving for later. I figured worst case we could edit this video in studio or whatever and change it if people really wanted. But for the most part, you're gonna always get the rawest form of me. I don't believe in hiding or lying or faking things. I'm very transparent that way. There's some kind of joke in there about trans and parents, but we're just gonna let that, I'm gonna leave that be. I've been going live off and on for a couple years, I think, on that place with faces, and there's something about reading or having previously read. And folks just seem to pretend they're OSHA inspectors and tell me I'm not supposed to wear a dress. And it's like, well, you're not my supervisor, you're not paying me. Sorry, it doesn't work like that. They get really high and mighty when I get on to like power tools and equipment. And it's like, geez, I'm 51. I've been doing it a minute. I've been doing it. Now we have to seal the vent hole where the filler goes. And not only do we have to seal that hole, we have to support the drain tube so that So when we pressurize the tank, we don't break it. It's like a straw in the middle. And even at like 2 psi, you're talking about 200 pounds pushing top to bottom on the tank. There we go. I actually, for a while, used a blank piece of aluminum as my fuel cap that I had to unbolt completely to fill up. That was kind of fun. I'm kind of a weirdo like that, so just watch out. Now on the underside, we're going to put these pieces. It's a plate, a spacer, and a wing nut. And these thread onto the 6mm all thread I run through. Oh, check out, you can see pieces of, this is where the flange. I think there are pins here locating the mold. So yeah, when the mold is loose enough there to lead that far out. So that's just great. Get that up. This is our test rig. It's we use a different colored connector that in theory is not compatible. Maybe it would help me not to just put shot air onto this fitting because that would blow the tank up. So the shot air is the typical industrial type. Then we have a 5 psi regulator, a needle valve, 5 psi gauge, the quick connect, and this is just a bleed off for the gauge. So you can just gently do it and it comes back down. And I have a shut off here that I'll throw when we go to dump the tank into the water. And crap, I didn't think about that part. I dragged you over there, but yeah, I have to go turn the air on. I'll be back in a second. Guess our valve is already open. That's great. So I just run this until the sides bulge out, which is 1.5-ish psi. So the dump tank is that trash can behind my toolbox. We have to sort of get things ready. Yay, no bubbles coming on anywhere, which is what we wanted. These tanks have been very reliable of late. Um, you know, a normal business might stop testing because you can pretty much every time there's been a problem, I could see it, and then I would test and verify that was a problem. Problems being you can visually check where the O-ring seals and tell there's an issue, but we're not going to have our customers do first level QC. It's easy enough to just dump it with pressure, and then that makes sure we don't have any obvious leaks. The rotational industry, their normal method for dump testing. So like this tank had 2 holes from vents, and they'd put their thumb over one of the holes or in one of the holes, and they'd use a blow tip in the other one, push it underwater, and just see if they see bubbles. That's not the most effective method. It'll catch big problems, but it won't catch subtle issues where O-rings seal. So we use O-rings to seal, and we do positive testing everywhere. These blue Scott paper towels are great for drying off. They don't scratch the tank. Polyethylene is like really soft and easy to scratch. That would be a feature. Smiling because I checked, there's no viewers. It's not like Reddit where I didn't say the replays where I guess live streams are sort of forced on everybody to some extent. That or there's just so many more people on YouTube, I just don't show up, which is probably more likely. Which is fine. When people appreciate my sarcasm, then my popularity will increase with votes and thumbs ups and things or whatever's, and that's great for y'all. Mostly I document the work I do. I figure if it's something I haven't done before on the channel or there's something unique, then I'll share it here. Otherwise, I just go live on Reddit and rant about stuff. That Simon said it again. I'm sorry. So, yeah, this is our monster tank. We drilled out the base. So we use the blanket, whose type, great fleece blanket, to protect the tank from the surface. Let's put the gloves back on. Gloves are half for me, but also I'm a huge wuss, and my skin is really, it's never been abused. I've always worn gloves, always, 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 for as long as I can remember. I feel the gloves allow me to grip harder, and I worry less about hurting my flesh. And so now I have really soft hands at 51, so they make a difference. Plus, it keeps me from getting finger goo on the tank, which I saw some, and I'm going to have to remove that. For production, I always use Phillips screws. They're very easy to engage and sometimes disengage, and they last kind of forever, even with abuse. The real key is to use the right size. So 6mm screws always have a number 3 head, and then the other ones have number 2. Plus, I like it because I sort of established the precedent of if it's a Phillips head, it's for the operators, meaning me, people working. If it's not Phillips head, leave it alone. So like when I do repairs to the molds, if it's a screw that stays in and I don't want it removed, I'll usually use some sort of hex drive or Allen key. The dampened drag from drying off the tank is great for grabbing debris. You would say, why don't I just do this at the end? Well, honestly, over the course of this, if I keep doing that, I found at the very end, it's less work to do it that last time. And while we have it upside down, we need to do the hole for the drain. This is an M10 by 1.0 tap, which coincidentally has a 1/4-inch hex, which is great. It fits in the magnetic holder and extension. 10 by 1.0 is remarkably similar to 8th 28 MTT, so that works out. When I used the brushless drill, I would leave the big battery on it, and then it never really, it was just better at clutching. And this one just, it either grabs and tries to break my wrist, or it skips and ratchets. It's just so strange. And it's a lot worse with the bigger battery on this. The older one, I just left the big battery on it all the time. That hole goes through to where the filler cap is, so that if you should put too much fuel in, it'll drain from that fitting. Yeah, you can't see through there. That's fine. plastic, a little bit of water. I have to be just a little careful about not dinging stuff so much. I'm going to drill out this, but you have to be careful because that tube is right behind it on an angle, and you don't want to cause that leak right there. And then, of course, you have to have really good tool discipline to keep from scratching the pretty part. So we're going to do ears, drill, and the vacuum. The diameter of the cutting is smaller than the diameter of the opening, so I have to trim it on the punch. Yeah, I'm just really not impressed with this drill. So we should probably buy a brushless type. Like the brushless one, I never had it chatter enough that the keyless chuck would let go. So that's a little annoying. Yeah, and the other one had like a different locking feature, like just better. I saw it back in our toolkit. Next step is we cut the notch where the filler cap engages. And so I have this router bit, and so I just went to the box store, bought a typical die grinder. I noticed it unscrews from its chassis. So I have the first sleeve screws onto the tool, the adapter sleeve screws onto that sleeve. And so the adapter tool has this guard in it because a lot of times when you have a rotating tool inside something round, it just wants to grab and drive around. Then to keep you from planing, I have this plate that it slides along. And then that way we know that the height is exactly where it needs to be so the fuel cap is level. And then it prevents us from ruining the tank by twisting this by hand. Initially it could be just, oh, well, I'll hold this down flat and do it, but this just works better. I haven't ruined any tanks with this tool. So that's a big part of production, is enabling your operators to do post-op work without ruining the part. Because right now, lots of work have gone into making this. So we don't want to wreck it at this stage. So we're gonna get the ears, the vacuum, the hose, make a bunch of noise. I could tell that the engineer didn't anticipate this being below the surface. Otherwise, maybe they would have made it work to where there was a nut and you didn't need to stick your fingers down. How's that engineer? Sorry. Oops. We have some more debris. I made this tool over 10 years ago. So we have our notch cut. We have one final functional operation to perform. As you fill up, you put the nozzle in here, and as the fuel, so like the tank is almost level, then as the fuel comes up, if you pay attention on most motorcycles, there's a little tiny hole, and it acts as a tattletale that level is getting high and it starts spraying at you. So we're going to add those holes, those little vent holes to the sides. That's next. As we made this tank, I had a monster, and I did, as soon as we had them, I always had one on my bike for testing. And I can confirm that before we did this, it wouldn't give you enough warning, and it would just splash right up on you and get on the tank. Well, that sucks. And at some point, I figured out to drill these vents. And I'm just so stoked. We have these power driver drill bits. I keep it in there. That's where it lives. So now we've done all of the functional prep, and we're going to now cut it with a hobby knife. So we're going to bring the blanket back. A little more shaking. A little more vacuuming.
we're just.
Hey Nick, how's it going?
It's going.
Yay. Nick has been helping feed my muscles, and he's learning how to run the oven, which is great because that's enabled me to get tanks more consistently released. I wonder if we can get you closer into what I'm doing. Okay. Right up in my grill, right in my teeth. And that's the kitty cat. That's Elliot. Eventually, as a person ages, make sure I don't run over kitty cat with the wheels. As a person ages, you can't see what the F you're doing. So now I have to wear binoculars. Yeah. Trimming is pretty difficult actually. Um, it looks easy, but trust me, it's not. So it's like whittling away at wood, except for more sensitive to repeat strokes. So if you whittle away at balsa wood, you notice all of your little whittle marks. Same with this. We'll have to check in and see how loud Nick's phone is because he's actually prepping the molds for our next bake and he's listening to a podcast. So that would be a great excuse to have to remake this video and maybe watch this one a few times, see what I could do better. I kind of just always assume I could do better because that's all of life. You're always trying to improve. Or I am anyway. If life was easy, I wouldn't need to improve, right? So one thing I do, a few things I do. So I'm always removing chips that fall because I don't want to grind them into a circuit. So the hand that holds the blade changes the angle and might apply down force. The other hand I use to push forward progress for cutting. And I found that helps prevent flyaway and accidents, and it just allows you to have a more consistent finish. So some of this is just removing rough spots because I think it's unprofessional to have sharp things on products. So any place there's a little bit of porosity, you're going to get bumps. And we found out that you cannot polish cast aluminum because it will always have porosity regardless of how shiny you make it. So we had to have the top mold section remade out of billet. So that's why the top has a continuously shiny surface. And then let's see if we can put the light in here on the reflection. I don't know if you can tell, but there's dots in here. And the porosity is extra bad around here. Can I get that in the reflection? Oh, there you go. So this piece also has a good bit of porosity. We didn't remake the entire tool because, well, that was a lot of money, and also we just didn't have the money at the time. Kind of ever since, really. I bet that music is pretty loud. So I get started cutting or trimming on the bottom of the tank. That way I have a feel for what my nerves are doing when I get to the very important top. There's going to be flash at just about every intersection of everything. Where there are weld repairs, the edges will become porous. Okay, I don't know where that chip fell, but who cares? There is no such thing as perfection with this. We just try to do the best we can for the best appearance. This section has some overlap because the shrink wasn't calculated correctly. when they machined the top. So it had a bit of overhang. So like this 1/4 inch overhang was also along these side seams, except for I took the time to blend those with grinders and then block sand back to a polished finish. It took a few months. Trying to figure the angle, it's always tricky. So it goes a little wavy through there. That's the risk you take of over trimming. You just keep whittling away and making it worse. So I try not to. The other great part about using two hands with pushing is that when it does fly away, you have a greater chance of not running it into yourself. So that's not running a hobby knife into your flesh is a good thing to figure out. And it's also why I love these gloves. I'll get you the bag. Not a sponsor. Is that backwards? Weird. Okay, strange. Yeah, so that supplies company. These are 6 mil nitrile gloves. I absolutely love them because there have been a few times that I've run the hobby knife into my own hand and it poked a hole in the glove, but not me. So it's nice when there's a fun coincidence protecting me from myself. We appreciate those moments. Come on now, don't shoot. I don't need it to be like that other video where I made a mistake for you. Broke the tap. Okay. I think we're going to take a stab at the important spots. So this area where it's complex bend is, there's always a pretty big gap. This actually looks a little thinner than usual, so I'm unlucky. The gap is almost perfect up here.
You want Five Guys?
Who?
Five Guys.
Don't they have a hot dog? I'll do a hot dog with ketchup on it, please. I'm just plain. We have ketchup.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. That's Nikki. She does shipping. Okay. It's important you can see the surface reflection next to the knife, and that's how I get close. This is so hard. Careful. So far, turning out fairly good. Okay. Yeah. So there I lost a little control and I made a little scratch underneath. So it happens. I just really try to not make scratches happen on top. Breathe, relax. It's okay. All right. We did really good through there. Maybe we'll be able to keep that. Through here, I try to trim without dragging the tip or the blade or leaving too much cut into the texture. Now at that point, we have to do something with.
Every time I hear that, I'm like, okay, you don't just flag out there.
No, that's why I need to go.
You getting Five Guys?
She already.
Oh, you already ordered?
Yeah, thank you. A lot of times I just have my cheese and crackers or cereal when they get lunch, but sometimes the stuff they get, I'm like, oh, I'll take that. Oh, yeah, you're still there on the computer. So I've got a laptop stand that's intended to bolt to like a pole or something. And so I figured out how to clamp it to the core of the tripod that you're on. And so I've got a portable PC and the camera attached. Then I found YouTube likes a little more bit rate than our Wi-Fi can do. It might just be because the computer you're on is more than 10 years old, I'm sure. It's a Core i3. I just love it. It refuses to die. I just have to make sure whenever I think I want to use it to get it started well ahead of time in case Windows says I don't get to use my computer. Okay, I'm not liking this. What do we need to do? We need to do this. Yeah, this part is okay. So no matter what, there's always going to be a seam. Where's the focus? I mean, there's always going to be a seam here somewhere, and it's just a matter of trying to make it the least obvious possible. And it's got a raised up point there. Oh yeah, okay. Okay, that's pretty consistent. I should not have touched the cat, but how can you not touch a cat? But thankfully, there's only a few cat hairs as opposed to a few hundred. I do keep them brushed. So I am pushing down with the hand with the handle and giving it angle. And that helps it dig in. And get the cut going. So the angle, you have to have a little bit of inward angle. Ooh, careful. Ooh, careful.
You got quiet today. Are you all right?
Yeah, I'm just YouTube live in, and this is like the
I
hardest.
got to do the precise work
This is like the hardest part.
so you don't mess up the smooth part.
Yeah, I got a little bit of tip happening, but it's okay.
I won't bother you.
A little bit of tip. Just the tip. Okay. And a little bit more through here. Yeah. Seriously? And sadly, there is a little bit of whittling. Thankfully, it's on the left side, so it's down with the side stand. And we need a little bit more right here. Let's see if we can do this. Perfect. Now we're going to just check the inserts. They'll get raised up spots around them. So we're at one of the ceiling surfaces, so we have to be nice to that top. So always have good tool discipline. A great way to ruin a perfectly good tank is to cause a tool to wreck a surface. Almost every other surface there is on our tanks I could fix, but you get down into that, I haven't been able to bring those back yet. And polyethylene is pretty stringy, so I like to get rid of the stringies for a more professional presentation. And then I cut off a piece. And we trimmed with the die grinder. Consistency with your tool discipline is super, super important. Always being aware of where something sharp is, avoiding hitting parts that matter, like the middle of the shiny. So this spot here is a little extra scaly. So I'm just kind of pulling off the high spots without polishing the surface. Every mark on the tool ends up on your part. And it's actually pretty difficult to keep polishing blemishes out because you end up creating waves in the material. So it's just a matter of you deal with scratches and things in the mold for as long as you can. So there's a scratch right there. Yeah, you'll probably never be able to see it. But like that's in the tool, it's not on the part. Okay, on to the fun. All right, it's gonna be loud. I'm gonna raise you up, turn you. Maybe it won't be loud. there's no lint back here. We're gonna turn off the fan. We're gonna bring on the fire cart. You have to open it super slowly because the safety valve in the tank shuts off if it thinks it's open to like the atmosphere. I don't have a regulator on this setup, so it's really easy to trip that, which is good, I guess. The rotational plants, they just have natural gas pipe to each workstation and they have a continuous fire going. It's honestly a little nuts. And there we have it. All right, thanks for watching. That was all the steps to turn a freshly molded MTT tank into something we can sell. There aren't much next steps. We do use a silicone spray cleaner from Maxima to apply the final light protective finish. And then we put in microfiber cloth, then we wrap it, and then we put padding around 4 corners and throw it in a box. So that makes it ready for those tanks with the fuel flange. On models that don't come with a fuel flange, we'll supply our own to adapt it, and that'll have the fitting for the fuel sending unit, and then we'll use MPT fittings there. So thanks for watching. We'll see you later. Appreciate ya.